Ron Paul needs to on foreign policy. Keep that to yourself. You sound a little like Osama bin Laden at times.
I have a gun to my head. I'll vote for Mitt Romney. And if it's Newt Gingrich and there's a third party and it's Ron Paul and I don't agree with his Middle Eastern policy at all, I might consider Ron Paul as a third party. I might consider Ron Paul as a third party. I might consider Ron Paul as a third party.
Well, I really have a big issue with Ron Paul's foreign policy. You know, I think it's naive in my view. And I think he's very sincere in his beliefs, and I'm not questioning his sincerity. But I really believe that to not recognize Iran with a nuclear weapon, coupled with Islamic extremism as a threat to every man, woman, and child in the world, is naive, and I think for us to not act now could lead to a catastrophe in terms of loss of human life. Why isn't Iraq paying us back with oil, and why didn't they pay for their own liberation? For the Kuwait oil minister, how short his memory is. You know, we have every right to go in there and, frankly, take all their oil. Dr. Paul, good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Sean. Good to be with you.
All right. When you laid out your plan, I mean, here we've got, you know, at the end of this last budget deal, it's going to be $16.7 trillion in debt. We're robbing from our kids and grandkids. You have said this from the very beginning. Cal Thomas was telling me you actually had a billboard back years ago about the government, and it said, let's put big government on a diet or something to that effect.
Right. We had a fat Uncle Sam. Put big government on a diet.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that was in '76. Things not only haven't changed, they've gotten dramatically worse. You've come up with a pretty, with a plan I actually support.
Even with my cuts, we're going to have 5 times as much as China spends on their military. Nobody's arming themselves to invade this country, and I do not believe that we should be in nation building, and we should not be involved in the entangling alliance and the internal affairs of other nations. It's not part of our Constitution. And it was also strongly advised by our founders, and Eisenhower warned us to stay out of these entangling alliances. Robert Taft, the famous Mr. Republican, he says, don't even get in NATO. But, Sean, this policy now, they get the authority from NATO and United Nations. They don't even...
We are NATO.
Obama doesn't even come...
But we are NATO.
I know, but how about the Congress?
Ron Paul. His foreign policy disqualifies him, in my eyes, as an American, not as a journalist.
This has been the plan by the neoconservatives to have this major overall, this revamping of the whole Middle East, precisely the reason the al-Qaeda is growing. The al-Qaeda is growing because of our policy. Our national security is threatened because of our policy, and it makes it much worse. So I see the Iranians as acting logically and defensively. We've been fighting the Iranians since 1953. We overthrew their government through the CIA in 1953. We were allies with Saddam Hussein in the 1980s, and we encouraged him to invade.
All right, so I just want to get Iran. We don't need a history lesson. We don't need a history lesson. We don't need a history lesson, but I do want to get this on the record.
You have to understand.
I do understand the region, but we don't have time to do the history lesson tonight. I just want to get this on the record. You don't fear Iran, even though Iran has demonstrated it can start a war, which it did last summer with its Hezbollah surrogates, and it stated that it wants to do damage to Israel, wipe it off the face of the earth.
In October of 2005, when Mahmoud Ahmadinejad first became Iran's president, he did call for Israel to be wiped off the map. But those statements were not connected to a nuclear weapon. Iran's president has repeatedly said that his country is not looking to build a nuclear weapon. He has never been quoted as saying that he would attack the United States, though. Doesn't mean that he wouldn't, but it's untrue to say that he has said that he would. According to the IAEA report, the agency said they have serious concerns regarding possible military dimensions to Iran's nuclear program. Information indicates that Iran has carried out activities relevant to the development of a nuclear explosive device. But the report did not give any specific timeline for the development of a nuclear explosive device. It was in an article in the LA Times where unnamed sources said that nuclear inspectors have concluded that Iran has acquired the technical means to design a nuclear weapon and would require about 6 months to enrich uranium to the quality needed for a bomb if it decided to do so. Since the United States began its war with Iraq, nearly $1 trillion in treasure has been spent. 4,500 U.S. troops have been killed, 32,000 more wounded, and over 650,000 Iraqis killed. Remember, because what we knew was that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and they were pursuing a nuclear weapon. In October of 2002, remember this? There is unmistakable evidence that Saddam Hussein is working aggressively to develop nuclear weapons and will likely have nuclear weapons within the next 5 years.
Everybody says it's 5 years or less. Everybody says it's 5 years or less. Everybody says it's 5 years or less.
So said Democrat Senator Jay Rockefeller and dozens of other politicians and world leaders. They were wrong about Iraq. And can we afford to be wrong about Iran? Can we afford to wait and see? That's what voters have to decide.
And don't let anybody make you think that God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, you are too arrogant. If you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power. And I'll place it in the hands of a nation that doesn't even know my name. Be still and know that I'm God.
We now promote preemptive war. I do not believe that's part of the American tradition. We in the past have always declared war in the defense of our liberties or go to aid somebody. But now we have accepted the principle of preemptive war. We have rejected the just war theory of Christianity. And now, tonight, we hear that we're not even willing to remove from the table a preemptive nuclear strike against the country that has done no harm to us directly and is no threat to our national security. I mean, we have to come to our senses about this issue of war and preemption and go back to traditions and our Constitution and defend our liberties and defend our rights, but not to think that we can change the world by force of arms and to start war.
Pope Benedict, who has recently appealed for an end to bloody conflicts in the Middle East, has also said the religious and intercultural dialogues are necessary to build a world of peace.
You don't need to do nation building in Israel. We're already built. You don't need to export democracy to Israel. We've already got it. And you don't need to send American troops to Israel. We defend ourselves.
Americans resort to force only when we must. We have never been aggressors. We have always struggled to defend freedom and democracy. We have no territorial ambitions. We occupy no countries.
I don't like it when we send our kids off to fight these wars, and when those individuals didn't go themselves and then come up and when they're asked, they say, oh, I don't think one person could have made a difference. I have a pet peeve that annoys me to a great deal, because when I see these young men coming back, my heart weeps for them. When I was drafting, I was married and had 2 kids, and I went.
I get to my God through Christ. Christ to me is a man of peace. He is for peace. He's not for war. He doesn't justify preemptive declared war. I strongly believe that there is a Christian doctrine of just war, and I believe this nation has drifted from that. No matter what the rationales are, we have drifted from that, and it's very, very dangerous, and I see in many ways being unchristian. And to justify what we do in the name of Christianity, I think is very dangerous and not part of what Christianity is all about. Christ came here for spiritual reasons, not secular war and boundaries and geography. And yet we are now dedicating so much of our aggressive activity in the name of God. But God, He is the Prince of Peace. That is what I see from my God, and through Christ, I vote for peace.